Hello everyone, my name is Lalit Soni and you are watching Target Prelims 2026 Revision with MCQ series by Drishti IAS. This is the fourth episode of history section wherein we will be discussing some MCQs. Before that, 3 episodes of history are out. There are 3 episodes of geography are out. Polity, science and tech, etc. are also been uploaded. So if you have not watched those, you start watching these. This is a high yielding series for your prelims. So start watching these episodes. So let's discuss the question number 1 as per this episode. Okay. Now the question number 1 says the later Mughals inability to effectively tackle Jagirdari crisis was characterized by. Statements are given. First is a sharp increase in number of amirs and mansabs. Amirs and mansab, we will see what they are, without a proportional increase in the disposable land. Now when we are talking about the Mughal system or the revenue system, if we talk about, so there was this Jagirdari system which was there. Now Jagirs are the lands from which they used to generate revenue. Okay. Now from here they used to generate the land revenue. And now when we are talking about this mansabs, there was another system, that is mansabdari system. Now under mansabdari system, what used to happen is that there were two kind of ranks or two kind of numbers were there. One was Jat and second was Sawar. Now this mansabdari, under this mansabdari system, there was a mansabdar. That mansabdar used to have two kind of numbers. One was the Jat, that is basically his rank. On the basis of that rank, a salary was decided. Okay. Now see this person as a noble. Okay. There was a noble whose salary was decided by this number, that is Jat. Okay. And this Sawar is the kind of service which he would provide to the you can say the system or to the Mughals. So that Sawar was basically the kind of army he could maintain, that is cavalry or the horsemen, and he will be providing these horsemen during the time of war. Okay. So that was the mansabdari system and that was Jagirdari system. Now this mansabdars used to get a salary. This salary used to be derived from the Jagirdari system, from where they are generating a revenue. That revenue is going for the salary and other expenditure of the state. Now what was the Jagirdari crisis? At particular point of time, what happens during the later Mughals was that these number of these mansabdar increases nearly around 14,000 something. Now there were so many nobles for whom the salary was to be given, but the land is fixed. There is a land pool which is fixed, and that is same. So the revenue is not increasing, but the expenditure is increasing. That has been called as the Jagirdari crisis. So here you can say the statement 1. Now amirs are another step in the mansabdari system. So in mansabdari system, one was mansabdar and then there was amir. Okay. So this was another rank, you can say. A sharp increase in the number of amirs and the mansabs, that means that a lot of money would be going into the salary. Okay. Without a proportional increase in the disposable lands, that is basically your Jagir. Now that salary can be in two kind. Okay. So this mansabdars used to get salary either in nakad that is cash, or in kind. Okay. So basically they used to get the Jagir. From there they used to derive the revenue from. So the proportional land was not increasing, salary was increasing, that led to the Jagirdari crisis. Okay. So that was the one reason. So you can say statement 1 is correct. Second is Aurangzeb's effort to record enhanced income from the remaining Jagirs. Now what happens is that few Jagirs has been given to the mansabdars. Okay. Now these mansabdars are getting the revenue from that. Now other Jagirs which are under the central government or you can say directly under the central authority of Mughals. So what they did was that they thought that we will be deriving in high income from this particular area. Now there was this particular land that was divided among the peasant, and there was, what is the source of the revenue? That is basically the tax. Now if you are trying to increase the income from this particular fixed piece of land, what you have to do is that you will increase the tax. Now the pressure started to build on the peasants, etc. So that was another reason. Aurangzeb's effort to record enhanced income from the remaining Jagir, that has also led to the Jagirdari crisis, because there was resentment. Okay. Then reduction of the Khalisa land during the increasing grants. Now Khalisa land is basically what? There is a limited land which is there under the central authority. Now central authority here is basically Mughals. So Mughals has some kind of direct control over certain land. Okay, this is not Jagirs. This is something, a direct control. You can say this is the piece of land on which the central government or the Mughals will be having the direct control. Now, this direct control land is called as the Khalisa land. Now, what happens is that since your Jagirs are limited, salary has to be increased, and you are increasing the Mansabdar. So, what they did was they started to use the Khalisa land as the Jagir land, and they used to get, they used to give some part of this land to the Jagirdars. Okay. Now, considering that the Khalisa land also started to decrease. So, here that is given the reduction of the Khalisa land due to the increasing grants. Okay. So, all the three statements here are correct. So, you can say option D is your right answer. I hope this is correct. This is clear that there are two kind of system. One is your Jagirdari system and one is Mansabdari. Mansabdari is basically kind of nobles. They will be having rank among themselves, and according to their rank, their service and their salary would be decided. Jagirdari is the basically system from which they used to derive the revenue. Okay. Third thing was the Khalisa land. That is, Khalisa land is not the Jagir land, but this is a land which is directly controlled by the central authority. Jagirs are controlled by the Jagirdars. Okay. Some cases these Jagirs are given to these Mansabdars so that they can derive the revenue from that as a salary. So, here the same thing is given, the vicious cycle. So, basically what happens is that there was a sharp increase in the number of the armies and their ranks, that is Mansabs, and acute shortage of the available land to distribute. Since number is increasing, land is fixed, revenue is fixed, that has led to a crisis. Then artificial record inflation. Aurangzeb records artificially enhanced income from the existing Jagirs to mask the shortage. Okay. So, what they did was that they started to put pressure on the existing Jagirdars to increase the income. What Jagirdars used to do, that they started to show artificial income. Okay. So, that was another crisis. Then peasant oppression, because obviously if you are increasing the tax, the final burden is on the peasants. Okay. Now, let us move further to the next part. Now, these are some of the reasons why Mughal empire falls. Okay. So, you can go through this. External shocks were there, like Nadir Shah and Ahmad Shah Abdali, they have gone for the raids in India. Okay, that was one thing. Second was the personal failures. The leaders, specifically after Aurangzeb's death, was not very competent one. Okay. Then institutional crises were there, like Zamindari system and the Jagirdari system, that crisis started to occur. And other thing was that when we talk about the rise of Maratha, etc., that was also another reason. Okay. The structural collapse, agrarian crisis because of the increase in the Lagan, or you can say the tax. Now, this explanation, whatever I have told you about, that is written in the text form over here. You can go through it. Now, question number 2, which one of the following state was not annexed under the doctrine of lapse? Now, you know that when we are talking about the expansion of British during the time of after, or specifically after the Plassey and Buxar, we can say. Okay, so at that point of time, there are certain doctrines which were acting as the tool for expansion. Okay, one of such doctrine was doctrine of lapse. So, what used to happen is that, now when we talk about number of princely states, so at that point of time there were two kind of princely state. One was the dependents and second were independent. Now, when we talk about these dependent princely states, these were under either rule of Mughals or Marathas. Since they were under the rule of Mughal or Marathas, and Britishers has actually taken control over the areas of Mughals and Marathas, these directly came under the control of British, and that is why they are dependent princely states. Now, the doctrine of lapse specifically talks about these dependent princely states. Okay. Now, when we talk about these independent princely states, they were not under Mughals or Marathas, they were directly annexed by the Britishers. Okay. Now, when we are talking about these dependent princely states, what used to happen is that if there is a, you can say, king, and if he is having a natural or biological heir, in that case the state and the personal property would be inherited by the son of this particular king. Okay. But if this king is not having a biological heir, then in traditionally what used to happen is that they used to go for adoption. and that adopted kid would be acting as a next king, and that particular son, adopted son, will be inheriting the property as well as the state. Okay. But now under the doctrine of lapse, the Britishers says that, or when we are talking about this particular doctrine of lapse, you must have heard about Lord Dalhousie. Okay, so that was his brainchild. So Dalhousie says that now if a king is not having a natural heir, he cannot adopt a son. Okay, he cannot adopt a son without the approval of the Britishers. Okay, one thing. Now even if Britishers are giving you the approval, there are another certain conditions are there, that he will be inheriting the personal property. Personal property he can inherit it, but the state will go to the British Empire. Okay, so that was the doctrine of lapse. Basically what they are saying is that if a king from the dependent princely state is not having a natural heir, the adopted son will not be getting the state in the inheritance, that will be going to the Britishers. Okay, so that is doctrine of lapse. Now the question says that which of the following state was not annexed under the doctrine of lapse. Now under the doctrine of lapse, there were certain states which were annexed, like Jhansi, Satara, Nagpur, etc. Okay. Now specifically if we talk about the Awadh, Awadh was not annexed under the doctrine of lapse. It was annexed under the pretext of misgovernance. Misgovernance or maladministration. Okay, so option C is your right answer over here for the question number 2. Okay, now here Jhansi was annexed by doctrine of lapse, Satara was annexed by doctrine of lapse. There was another other, you can say, areas like Nagpur, Udaipur, certain areas like this were also annexed by the, you can say, doctrine of lapse. Now Awadh was under the pretext of misgovernance. It was under Nawab Wajid Ali Shah when it was annexed. Okay, so that is about doctrine of lapse. You can go through it. Here you can say abolition of princely status for the rulers deemed manifestly incompetent or died without a male heir, denying the traditional right of adoption. Okay, Satara, Jhansi, Nagpur were you can say taken under the doctrine of lapse. Awadh was annexed under the pretext of misgovernment. Okay, now the explanation is given over here. Satara, Jhansi we have discussed, Nagpur we have discussed, and Awadh also we have discussed. Lord Dalhousie has annexed the you can say Awadh in 1856, and when we are talking about the annexation of Awadh, the ruler was Nawab Wajid Ali Shah. Now question number 3, consider the following statement with reference to the early British establishment in India. Consider the following statement: the permission to build St. George Fort at Madras was obtained from the ruler of Chandragiri. Now this is a factual question, so yes, this statement is correct. Second is the construction of Fort St. George preceded the establishment of the Fort Williams at Calcutta. That is also true. Now when we talk about the first factory, you know that the Farman for the first factory was given for the Surat, but then establishment, if we talk about, that was in the southern part of India, that was basically Masulipattnam. Okay. Now after Masulipattnam, you can say they have gone for the fortification of St. George. So these two statements are correct over here, both 1 and 2. Option C is your right answer. Now here if we are looking at the explanation part, you can see this was Madras. Now here you can see British merchant Francis Day. He was the person who has basically obtained the Farman from the ruler of Chandragiri. Okay, he has taken the Farman to fortify this particular area. The construction of the Fort St. George, replacing the Masulipattnam at the headquarters of the British settlement in the South India. So earlier, as I told you, Masulipattnam was the settlement where the factory was established, but after this particular fort was built in Madras, they have actually shifted the authority to this particular area. Okay. Now if we talk about Calcutta and the Fort Williams, so that was established somewhere around 1700. When we talk about this was established somewhere around 1639. Okay, so that is about this. Now if we are talking about Calcutta and this Fort Williams here, so areas like Sutanuti, Gobindpur, and Kalikata. These were the area for whom they have got the zamindari rights. Okay, they have taken these areas and then started the fortification of Fort William in this particular area. Now this Kalikata or the nearby area is now Kolkata. Okay. Now explanation is given, answer is C. British merchant Francis Day was the person who has taken the farman, or you can say the permission, from the ruler of Chandragiri in 1639, which we have seen, and then they have built a Fort St. George in this particular area, and you can say the authority, the seat of authority from the Masulipatnam and shifted to this particular area. Okay. Now question number 4, which of the following constitutional act established that the members of the government of member of the home government in Britain associated with the governance of India were to be paid out of the Indian revenue? Now what they are trying to say over here is that basically, you know that this is India and somewhere over here in an island Britishers were there, and India was at that point of time under East India Company. Now this company was a private entity, and then from the government here or the parliamentarian over here, they wanted to have a control over this particular company as well. Okay. Now the person who were responsible for the governance of India in Britain, they used to take salaries from the revenue which is generated from India itself. Okay. They are not taking the salaries from the government of Britain or the king. Okay, but they are taking salaries from India, and that was facilitated by basically, you can say, the Charter Act of 1793. Okay, option C is your right answer. Now regulating act of 1773, and then Pitt's India Act, that was kind of an amendment act, 1784, then comes the 1793, and after that there was a series of acts which has come to ensure the governance in India by the help of the East India Company before and after 1857. There was this another act of 1858, that actually transferred the power to the crown directly. Earlier it was under EIC. Okay. So now the role of EIC was normally as a private entity, and the rule was transferred to the crown. Before that, this private entity was ruling the country. Okay. No doubt after 1773 and then following acts, they significantly decreased the authority, or you can say the powers of the EIC, but again the power was wholly transferred to the crown in 1858 after the 1857's revolution. Okay. Now here you can say the Charter Act of 1793 that has basically, you can say, renewed the corporate monopoly of the East India Company. As I told you, this was a private commercial company which was doing trade in India. So they have actually increased the monopoly here. They renewed the EIC's commercial privilege for 20 years. Then if we are talking about the royal tribute, mandated an annual payment of £5 to the British government from the Indian revenues. That was the tribute, one thing. Second was the administrative drain, basically the salaries of the person who was part of the governance of India in Britain, they will be getting salaries from the Indian revenues. Okay. Then another part was the trade expansion, that was obviously because of the corporate monopoly. And if we talk about the judicial shift, here they have separated the revenue administration from the judicial functions. That is a different story. Now for your exams point of view, for your prelims as well, so all these acts basically, if we are talking about, we have already seen the establishment of the St. George. Then comes the first act, that was the 1773 regulating act. That was the first step towards the centralization. Now what was happening before that? There were 3 presidencies which was there: Bombay, then Madras and Calcutta. Now they have tried to ensure that there was some kind of you can say centralization. So there was this you can say position of Governor General of Bengal was created over here. Okay. And before that, every presidency was having a Governor General. Now Governor General of Bengal will be having a that will be overseeing the company's operation in India. Okay. Then comes the next act, that was basically your Pitt's India Act 1784, that is also important for you. And after that series of acts came, then another one was 1793, which we have already discussed. Then comes the 1813 Act, which actually extended the, you can say, monopoly of EIC, but only to the tea and trade with China. All other aspects were, you can say, ignored over here. Okay. Now these two were kept under the monopoly of EIC, and in 1833 the whole monopoly was you can say abolished. And when we are talking about the 1853, there was this you can say 12-member council which was built in Britain, which will be, you know, governing the activities of the EIC. After that, when we are talking about the act of you can say 1858, herein the whole power was basically transferred to the crown. Okay, so all these acts are important for you. You should go through all these acts. This we have already discussed, the you know, Charter Act of 1793. Now here, if we are talking about the Government of India Act 1858, which we have seen that the power was transferred. After that, various acts were there. One was the Indian Council Act 1861. Now herein you will be seeing that slowly the involvement of Indians were also started. Okay, after all these places. Then 1892 Morley Minto reform, that is you know, quite famous. Then there was this Montagu Chelmsford, this was there. And then the, you can say 1935 Act, Government of India 1935 Act, that is kind of, you can say, the when we are talking about the Indian Constitution, a lot of the administrative aspects has been taken from that. Okay, so these are the legislative developments which has happened during the modern India, which has shaped you can say the rule or the administration at that point of time. So all these things are important for you, so you will have to revise all these things. For your normal understanding, I have given these slides over here so that you can go through this and ensure that this will help you in the elimination game. Okay, so I hope that is clear. We can move further to the next question, that is question number 5. The doctrine of masterly inactivity associated with the British frontier policy was primarily a reaction to the increased Russian influence in the Persia, which treated British India's security via Khyber Pass. Now obviously when we are talking about the masterly inactivity, there were two kind of policy. One was that forward policy. This policy was from Lytton, okay, Viceroy Lytton. And then there was this second policy, that is masterly inactivity. Now here you can say forward policy, that means that this was certain kind of active policy wherein they were aggressive. Okay, then second is the masterly inactivity, which says that we will be taking a passive instance now. So that was the thing. Now when we are talking about these two policies, that was generally with respect to Afghanistan. Why Afghanistan? Because Afghanistan was kind of a buffer between the Russian expansion which was happening towards India and the British rule which was there in India. So to, you know, safeguard the, you can say, India was generally called as the gem in the crown. Okay, so to safeguard that gem in the crown, they created Afghanistan as a buffer. So they have gone for various experiments. One was that forward policy, which did not work out. Because of the forward policy, there was this first Indo-Afghan war, okay, and heavy cost was incurred in that particular war, and Britishers realized that we cannot go ahead with this. So they have gone for the masterly inactivity. They said that we will not be interfering in the internal aspects and we will be looking at the Afghanistan from outside. So that was the one. So option B can be your right answer, the disastrous and the costly consequence of the first Indo-Afghan war because of the forward policy of Lord Lytton. Okay, so option B is your right answer. Now let's see the other options as well. The expansionist policy of the Ranjit Singh. Now Ranjit Singh's policy has nothing to do with the masterly inactivity. However, when we are talking about the Ranjit Singh initial years, you can say there was a treaty of friendship between Ranjit Singh and the Britishers, and after the death of you can say Ranjit Singh, we have seen the Indo-Sikh war, Anglo-Sikh wars, okay, and that has basically, you can say, led to the annexation of Punjab. Okay, then the rise of the Talpura Amirs in Sindh, that was already before, you can say, all these that was already done. Okay, so that is also not your answer. So frontier pendulum, if we are talking about the, you know, foreign policy here, forward policy by Lytton, aggressive intervention in to counter Russian influence in the Afghanistan area. So that has led to the first Afghanistan war. Then comes to the masterly inactivity, that is of the John Lawrence, a pragmatic, watchful, non-interventionist policy with respect to the Hindu Kush as a natural buffer, avoiding the financial ruin by the occupation of the Afghanistan. So that was the reason behind the, you can say, masterly inactivity. Here you can see this is India, this is Hindu Kush, this area is basically your Afghanistan, and this generally you know that Afghanistan is also known as the land of great games, and here Russian expansion was feared. So that was the, you can say, masterly inactivity policy. Now, policy of masterly inactivity was associated with the John Lawrence, who served as the Governor General in 1864 to 69. So this was a passive approach emphasizing non-intervention or the non-interference in the internal affairs of the Afghanistan, which we have already seen. Now, if we are talking about the forward policy that has led to the disastrous Indo-Afghan war, Russian influence was the long-term strategic concern that prompted the earlier forward policy under the Auckland. Okay, so it started under the Auckland, and Lord Lytton was also part of it. Now let's move further. Expansion of the Ranjit Singh's primarily concerned under the British relation to Sindh. So as I already told you, that Ranjit Singh has nothing to do with the Afghanistan policy. And then when we are talking about the Talpura Amirs, so annexed the Sindh was already annexed in 1843. Okay. Now moving further, during the period of the Poligar Revolt, the term Kaval were referred to a hereditary village officers for maintaining law and order, a village assembly for disputed resolution, a local officer responsible for tax collection, hereditary officers managing the village irrigation. Option A is your right answer. Now, because since it is a term, or you can say it is a factual question, you should remember when we are talking about the Poligar Revolt, at that point of time, that the reason behind this particular revolt was that this term Kaval. So what used to happen is that this was a kind of a community policing, or you can say the locals over there, they used to use this particular people, or you can say these people were appointed to police and see the law and order situation in that area. Now, Britishers started to intervene in that, and they have tried to stop this particular practice, and because of which this Poligar revolt started in the region. So here you can see the Kaval system. It was a hereditary village police office system, which wherein the law and order was maintained in Tamil Nadu with this particular system, sustained by the local Kaval fees. So for this system, or to provide for the salaries of these Kaval which were appointed over here, there was a fees which used to be taken, that was Kaval fees. Okay. So here you can say Britishers interference in this particular system. Administration formally deprived the local leaders of their right to collect Kaval fees. Okay. Now obviously because of this system they used to take this particular fees, and now British are saying that you cannot take this fees, and because of which the revolt started. That has led to the Poligar revolt in Tamil Nadu. Now next question says, you can go through this explanation which is given over here. Now you can see the next question, question number 7. With reference to Raja Ram Mohan Roy and the Brahmo Samaj, consider the following statement. Okay. First is, he set up the Atmiya Sabha in 1814 to campaign against the idolatry and propagate the monotheistic ideas of Vedanta. Okay. So this statement is correct. Atmiya Sabha was established in 1840, and this was against Murti Puja. Okay. That is idolatry. And then when we are talking about the monotheistic idols, okay, so they propagated the idea that God is one. Okay. Then comes the second one. The Brahmo Samaj officially took no definite stance with respect to the doctrine of karma and the transmigration of the soul. So in that regard, they have been flexible, that individual can decide on their own. They have not taken any official stance with respect to this. Okay, so both the statements are correct. Option C is your right answer. Okay, here you can see Raja Ram Mohan Roy, often called as the father of Indian Renaissance, put his faith in monotheism. He has this influence, Western or the modern education's influence he was having, and he was a well-read person. Okay, and considering that, he believed in monotheism and believed in the modern scientific approach and principle of human dignity and the social equality. In 1814, he has established Atmiya Sabha, or the Society of Friends, in Calcutta. The primary objective of the Atmiya Sabha was to campaign against the idolatry and caste rigidities, meaningless rituals, and while simultaneously propagating the monotheistic ideals of the Vedanta. Okay, then comes the Brahmo Samaj. Brahmo Samaj, which founded as the Brahmo Samaj in August 18. Brahmo Sabha, sorry, it was founded as Brahmo Sabha and then renamed as Samaj, Brahmo Samaj. Okay, in August 1828. So now there were two establishments. One was 1814, that is Atmiya Sabha, and then here 1828, that was Brahmo Samaj. Okay, to institutionalize his ideas and was committed to the worship of eternal, unsearchable, immutable being. That is, you can say they try to propagate monotheism over here. Key features, if we talk about, they denounce any kind of polytheism and idol worship. Second was they discarded the faith in divine avatars, incarnations, because they were believing in only one god or monotheism. So they have discarded all the incarnations. Then it denied that any scripture could enjoy the status of ultimate authority. Any kind of text cannot be an ultimate authority. What is ultimate authority? That is rationality of the human reason and the conscience. Okay, it took no definite stand on the doctrine of karma and transmigration, which we have already discussed. Okay, and it was left to the individual to decide for himself. It criticizes the caste system, which we have already talked about. Now question number 8, consider the following statement regarding the Paramhans Mandali. These questions are from your social reforms. Okay, so statement 1 says that it was closely linked to the ideology of Manav Dharma Sabha, believing in one god and increasing freedom of thought. Correct. Second is its founders were primarily interested in breaking the caste rules by consuming food cooked by the lower caste people, so called lower caste people. Yes, that is also true. Then third is it pioneered social reform through the journalism in Bombay, leading to the starting of the newspaper Darpan. Now this is incorrect, because Darpan was something, you can say, a precursor of this. Darpan was already started before that. Okay, so 1 and 2 is correct. Option A would be your right answer over here. Since it is a factual question, we can go through the explanation here. Paramhans Mandali was founded in 1849. Now, when we are talking about that Darpan, that was somewhere around 1830s, I guess 1832. Okay, so Paramhans Mandali was founded in 1849 in Maharashtra by figures like Dadoba Pandurang and Mehtaji Dungaram. Okay. Then comes the second one. The ideology of the society was closely linked to the Manav Dharma Sabha. Its core beliefs were that one god is there and that should be worshipped, and that the real religion is based on love and moral conduct. The Mandali also encouraged the freedom of thought and rationality. Similarly, Mandali was against the caste related issues. So they wanted to break the caste rules and the stereotypes. The Mandali was advocating for the widow remarriage and the woman's education. And when we are talking about the Darpan, that was Bal Sastri Jambekar was the person behind the newspaper, that is Darpan, which was established in 1832. Okay, I hope that is clear. Now we can move further to the question number 9. Consider the following political association active before the Indian National Congress. Now when we talk about the Jamindari Association, yes, it was active and it was in Calcutta. Okay, and this is basically you can say the Jamindars were actually going together, or making an association for their own interest. Okay, so that was one thing. Then British Indian Association, yes, that was also precursor of Congress. When we talk about the East India Association, that was established by Dada Bhai Nauroji, but that was not in India, that was in Britain. This was to put forward the Indian question, and that we cannot say that that was directly the precursor of Indian National Congress. And then Indian Association, obviously SN Bose was a person behind that. Okay, so we can say that 1, 2 and 4 were the institutions or the organizations which were precursor of Indian National Congress. 1, 2 and 4, you can say option A would be your right answer over here. Okay, so here you can see in Bengal there was this landholder society or the Jamindar society, here Jamindari Association, that was in Calcutta. Then the Indian Association in you can say Calcutta, sorry, not SN Bose, that is AM Bose, Anand Mohan Bose, and S.N. Banerjee. What I meant was that is S.N. Banerjee and Bose was the people behind the Indian Association. So, Landholders Society and the Indian Association that was working in Bengal. Then if you talk about Bombay, that is Pune Sarvajanik Sabha which was there, Bombay Presidency Association was there. If we talk about London etc., so you will be saying that that was in London. Indirectly you can say they were also responsible, okay, but in India these are the associations which were, you can say, directly related to the Indian National Congress. In 1885 again we can say that Indian National Congress came into picture, okay. Now Jamindari Association or the Landholder Society that was established in 1838 in Bengal, beginning of the organized political activities. Any kind of political activities was started over here. However, that was to serve the interest of the Jamindars, okay, and not to the normal people. Then comes the second one, that is the British Indian Association. That was the merger of the Landholder Society with this particular association that was there in Bengal. 1851, it resulted from the merger of the Landholder Society, that is Zamindari Association, and the Bengal British India Society. Then comes the next one, in the East India Association. As I told you, that was established by Dada Bhai Nauroji in 1866 in London, discussed the Indian question and influenced the public opinion in England, okay. Then comes the next one, Indian Association of Calcutta. That is the most important one, okay, that led to the formation of Congress. So that is basically in Calcutta, 1876. It was started by Surendranath Banerjee and Anand Mohan Bose. This was the forerunner of the INC, you can say. Now the last question says that who among the following was the founding member of the Indian National Social Conference? Dadabhai Nauroji, Lala Lajpat Rai, Mahadev Govind Ranade or Gopal Krishna Gokhale. Now if we talk about Dadabhai Nauroji, he was quite prominent when we are talking about the wealth drain etc. So he was brain behind that. Then Lala Lajpat Rai, he was from the extremist section of the Congress. Then Gopal Krishna Gokhale was from the moderates, and M.G. Ranade was the person who was behind the Indian National Social Conference. Now Indian National Social Conference was basically a body which was working for the you can say welfare of the society, and you can say some social issues, okay. Their session used to be at the same time and the place of the session of INC. Wherever the session of INC is happening, they also conduct their session over there. So generally it is said that this was the social cell of the INC, okay, and M.G. Ranade was a person behind that. Option C is your right answer. Here you can say the Indian National Social Conference was founded in 1887, 1885 Congress was established, and in 1887 Bombay you can say INSC was you can say established. It was founded by M.G. Ranade and Raghunath Rao, okay. Conference met annually, same time and venue as of the Indian National Congress, and it is also known as the social reform cell of the Indian National Congress, okay. When we talk about Dadabhai Nauroji, we have already seen that the East India Association in the last question was established by Dadabhai Nauroji, and he was also member of the Rehnumai Majdayasanan Sabha, that was a Parsi organization, okay, and he edited the Voice of India, you can say an it was a newspaper or a magazine, I am not sure of that, you can go and check. So Voice of India, he was the editor of Voice of India. Lala Lajpat Rai, I told you that he was the extremist from the INC, and he was also the first president of All India Trade Union Congress in 1920. Gopal Krishna Gokhale, he was part of your moderate wing of the Indian National Congress, and he has also established Servants of India Society, okay. He was also known as the political guru of Mahatma Gandhi, okay. I hope that is something which you must know already. So that is about this episode. We will be meeting you in the next episode. Before that, there is a practice question for you. Consider the following pair. Governor generals are given over here, and then there are certain, you can say, treaties or the annexation. They are associated with Lord Curzon, Treaty of Bassein, Lord Metcalfe, annexation of Sindh, Lord Hastings, Treaty of Sagoli, Lord Amherst, First Burmese War. You have to select the matches which are correctly matched. Okay, so you can go through it and reply me in the comment box. With that, I would like to take your leave. I'll see you in the next episode. Till then, have a nice day. Thank you, and please don't forget to subscribe the channel. Thank you.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.